Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Parental Playbook Podcast. And I am joined this morning by a very special guest. April Watkins is here with us, and April is the mother of Darren Reese Watkins, who is an IMG Academy volleyball superstar. So, April, what a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Mark. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I want to start kind of sort of at the beginning, right? Like, how did you guys end up at IMG? Because we know, the best of the best go to IMG. I mean, they come from all over the world to go there. This must have been an incredible experience for Reese. And how did you guys find them, or did they find you?
Well, a little bit of both actually. But she ended up at IMG because basically, and I love Atlanta Metro, and we have some very great, volleyball clubs here. A lot of sports are great here, youth sports especially. But we found ourselves just really searching for more and more elite programming. I had a kid who loves the sport, and we were trying to navigate school, trying to navigate teachers, trying to navigate when we travel, also focusing on like body recovery. We were working with physical therapists and strength and conditioning, agility people, mental coaches, leadership coaches, communication coaches, then still having to do practice. And you might have both high school practice and club practice. And then the trainers, doing all the outside training. And so I had a kid that would get up, 6 in the morning and she wasn't getting to bed until like 2 a.m. and then
Oh,
wash, rinse, repeat, right? And then of course, here I am, having to forego and sacrifice some of my corporate, executive career, and I'm ushering and driving her around. So it's also very taxing, on me. And the other thing is I just found that people are inept. And I was just looking for a program that kind of put it all together. And I knew about IMG in terms of, the other sports they've been known for, tennis and football and basketball and in baseball, but heard from one of Reese's mental coaches that they might be starting a volleyball program. And I said, okay, kind of followed in the back. I think at one point we inquired that when it becomes available, send us some information. But it took them a while to get it going. So we actually kind of dismissed it and just said,
okay.
hey, you're about to be, I think when we started hearing that they would have a program, she was in maybe entering ninth grade. And she didn't get into the program until her junior year, her 11th grade. So when they finally found the director and sort of got things going, she just, by that time, it's like, you're going to be a junior. She was more concerned about having a succinct junior, senior year. She didn't want to uproot. And so we dismissed it. And then about that time, they'd started to call when she was going from sophomore to junior year. And she and I were like, nah, we're not going to do it. Like, just not even going to call them back. But they kept,
Right.
trying to reach us. And then when I didn't really respond, I believe they just skipped over me and went to my husband. And Daryl's stance was, well, you can't say no to what you haven't seen. But we were just kinda over it. She's experienced, so much adversity here in Atlanta Metro, and I'm sure other people have
Sure.
a similar story. But, we just kinda said, "Okay, let's just go see." And, next thing you know, she went in there, she was balling out, and they were like, "Yeah, she is the type, person we want in this program," and she loved it. She loved that she had everything under one roof, that she would be practicing every day, that she had support nutrition-wise, body and recovery wise, strength and conditioning, leadership coaching, mental training under all one roof. It actually gave her, or has given her, what the next steps look like, what college looks like. You'll be on your own. You have to navigate it. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself. You can't run to mom and dad, and expect us to insert ourselves, which we were never those type of parents, by the way. But yeah, and here we
Not
are. She's now in her senior year and graduating in May and headed to Howard University.
right. Wow. What a commitment. That is awesome because she's going to have the best of both worlds. You're going to play a really good schedule there. And plus, you got great academics. And we know some of the world's best leaders have come from Howard University. So who knows? We may see Madam Vice President one day. Yes. Yes, indeed. So tell me a little bit about the process. Did you guys feel comfortable with sending her down there? Because I talked to a lot of parents about prep school. I feel like it was the best thing we ever did for our young hockey player. But we were able to keep the lines of communication open. You know, I'm a big proponent of that. So, how did you guys support her during this process? Because they got to mature quickly.
Yes, well, we actually, we are probably more logical than we are emotional and
Okay.
practical. And so we've just always been the type of parents that, we're not focused on the current step. We're always what's the next step. And Reese is a twin. She has a twin brother and they were very premature. So we've always, since they were born, just been in that lane of we have to push them. We have to push them. They're gonna have gaps. And so we've just always been that way. So it really wasn't a hard decision for us. And likewise, I'd actually thought about boarding school even before my kids ever got into sports. I just love the independence and the maturation process that it does for them. But we knew she was ready. We know how we reared her. We knew she had a good, value system, foundation basis. I mean, this was the kid when I had her playing at 10 and 11 years old in clubs. And she came to me to say, I'm at this club, but I don't think this is the right spot for me because it doesn't align with our family values.
Wow.
So we just knew. But we've always been the parenting too that it's like, it's not about us and our comfort. It's about what's her next step, right? And so I think many parents have asked me, and I just kind of try to shock them out of everything you're saying is about you. It's not about your child. You're saying, I don't
Mm,
know if I'm comfortable. Well, that's you. I don't know if
wow.
I can let them go. Well, that's you. Even when it came to college, she has a twin brother and, they've been together since utero. But
Mhm.
I've always treated them not like twins, but like they haven't been in the same school since middle school.
Wow. Okay.
I let them
Eh,
forge their own paths, and I think
Not
that's what parenting is.
nice. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the college selection and the choice. Because the last I checked and last I heard, you guys had a whole lot of D1 schools looking at Miss Reese because of her talent. She's got great length. I've seen some of her highlight films. She is exciting to watch. So, how did you guys manage to skip over the sizzle and the flash of all those D1 schools and end up at my alma mater, Howard University? Now, you know I'm happy. You know I'm happy. But how'd you get
Yes.
all the trappings of D1 success?
Well, I think, we've been at this a long time. And we did not leave it up to anyone else to market her or say what she could and couldn't do. We wanted independent thought. And, you find a lot of times in both high school and club sports that there's a lot of steering and politics, right? But she did have a lot of interest. So we just started early, making sure that she was very grounded, number one, that things align with our values. We always said it's not just about sports, it has to be about life. This is about your life. And if you want sports, we can pursue it. If you don't, we don't have to. And we exposed her to a lot of sports. It's not like we only did volleyball. She was actually really great at a lot of sports. She was an excellent swimmer. She's really fast. We wanted her to do track. She played boys baseball. She was on
Oh,
a
wow.
co-ed soccer team. And many people wanted her to play basketball, but she never wanted to do basketball. But she actually has a great shot. But it was something about, we even did tennis, but we learned early on that she preferred team sports. But when she found volleyball, she just, something inside her just loves the sport. But
Yeah.
because of all that hard work and what we did to showcase, we never relied on just leaving her here. We would take her around the country to showcases and trainings. We've trained with people all around the country. And when
Wow.
they met her and saw her work ethic, she still has gaps. Everybody does. Always your weaknesses are going to be your weaknesses, but they just really saw her potential and her determination. And so, people began to put those fillers out there. I think another benefit to her getting so much, high response from D1 schools was she played up when she was 14, turning 15, which kind of put her in that lens around. She was 14, turning 15, playing with 16s. And that's their recruiting year.
Okay.
And so
Gotcha.
she was the only one, so that got her a lot of exposure by her just being on that team. They thought, "Well, she's ready to be recruited too," and it's like, "No, she has more time to cook." But, that definitely put her on the radar, and from there, it just kinda, we just kept, highlighting her, getting training, those sort of things. And we got mostly D1 offers. Very few D2 schools reached out, maybe about 2 or 3. We had no D3s reach out, and we only had 2 HBCUs reach out.
No.
And she was
Oh,
impressed with both of them. But yeah, and I think just once she began to get into the visiting phase of
mm,
it, that's when it kinda really took hold for her that I have to think about me in total, not just yeah. And I think, in fairness, volleyball is still a sport where you don't see a lot of people of color, at least the female side for sure.
mhm.
You go to these convention centers and you could just, do a 360 and view how many courts are there. Sometimes there's 100, 200 courts, they rented an entire, arena and you see very few. I mean, it's better. When she started, she was the only one,
Wow.
a lot on her team. And we would go places you would, search forever and you wouldn't see a person of color. And then it's gotten better, but it's still very underrepresented, from the sport perspective. So I think too, Howard made her feel seen. And on top of that, they have a great volleyball program. But
Good.
when she went there, she spent a lot of time with the girls and with the staff and Coach Cup and Coach Phil and Coach Jamie Jameson at the time were there and they tapped into who she is, not what she can do for them. And everywhere else she went, she said, "Yeah, they seem like they'll support me, but I feel like I'm a tool,
Mhm.
versus being a
Get it.
part of something."
Get it. And that's one of the things that stands out about both my experience, my wife experience, and my son's experience at Howard is that we were a part of something. Just like you saw during Kamala's election run for the presidency. We were all running for the presidency with her. So, it's a unique experience, but I want to get back to your investment and your husband's
Ooh,
investment. It sounds like you
okay.
guys had a process here, and I don't mean the treasure part of it, but I mean the time, right? Investing in her talent and exposing her to these different kinds of opportunities. You said you worked out with people all over the country. We did the same thing with hockey. And if I could, and my son didn't go play D1 hockey, I would do it all again just because of the experience and the things they got to see. Did you feel that it was all worth it?
Absolutely. I would do it all over again. I might even immerse myself sooner than I did. I knew the sport. It's a little different. It wasn't my main sport. I was more of a softball player, but I knew the sport. When I dabbled in it, there wasn't a libero and some of the things they have now, but I knew enough. And initially, when she first got started, I was still a corporate executive and traveling globally a lot and had nannies and the like. And they were initially doing all the take to and from. And, and they would come back and say, she's really good at this. And I'm like, oh yeah, you don't know. But then when I sort of inserted myself, I was like, okay, and then I saw some of the politics at play in the adversity. I'm like, you got a kid that at 9 and 10 years old has the dexterity to not hit a ground ball. That young, everything is hit
Right.
ground balls, meaning you're not jumping. And then,
Right.
serving underhand and all of that stuff. And she literally started jumping and hitting the ball off the ground like before anyone else in her age group at the time.
Wow.
And so we just
Nice.
knew. And so I just kind of said, I have to be more present. I started, getting involved. I started to update, my modern learning of the sport. And then when I started to see the politics and adversity, come into play, I was like, I really have to insert myself. And that's one of the things I really have to tell parents now. You got to stay close. Just like we're trying to stay close on the academia side, we really have to stay close. And I'm not saying being an intrusive parent and not allowing coaches to coach, but you have to, especially with the politics and the adversity and maybe even some of the racism side of things and being a female volleyball is heavily coached by males.
Wow.
Um,
I
yeah,
didn't know that.
heavily. You rarely see female coaches, even at the collegiate level. I mean, this past year in the NCAA finals was the first time we ever had 2 female head coaches in the finals.
Wow.
Yes.
I did not know that. That is
So,
so
and there's just yeah. So that's when I knew, and Daryl supported it. He was like, "I get it," and so I started to peel back on how much I was pursuing these C-suite roles in my next one because I've been away from my children, quite a bit, and so that's where it took hold. And then when I got involved, I said, I may not know how they do it now, but I was like, when I saw them regimenting my kid to certain things, unfortunately, with Black females who are who are athletic, they want to relegate them to certain positions.
yes.
They wanna put them and these positions are great, by the way, but seemingly all Black girls start out as middles, and I was like, "Well, the girl can, like, run really quickly, she's very agile for her height," and it was like, "Well, no, we just want her to block and hit, she doesn't need to learn anything else," and I was like, "Oh, no." I said,
No,
"Volleyball is all skills," and so that's when I really started to insert myself, and I was like, "If you're not
right,
gonna give my child what she needs, I will."
right,
And so I
right.
immersed myself. I started to learn the true players. A lot of trainers and coaches misrepresent and embellish their experience and their accolades. And so if you're not an astute, involved parent and really just immersing and learning about the sport, your kid can get lost in a shuffle. And another thing that happens is people want to compare the sport to other sports. And volleyball is a sport that is full of rules. A lot of
Oh.
rules. Like I've met so many, especially the dads. I hate to talk about y'all, but the football and the basketball dads that think, like, make a substitution, do this. And it's like they're speaking, inappropriately, they're misspeaking. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it doesn't work like that. So, you have to learn. And I'm doing the same thing with my son. I just say, whatever your children are interested in, we are stewards to help them navigate until they reach adulthood. And
I
then
love it.
even after that, we're still advising. But you gotta learn. But yeah, I just said and I would learn the sport again to kind of re-over, and I was like I was honest with her. I'm like, we gotta go work on blocking."
Yeah,
And so for a long time, I did that, and she began to respect that feedback and want it. And then as she got older, now it's like, "Mom, I know I got it. I know what to do." But I took the time, and I didn't treat, these kids didn't ask to be here.
right,
So, it's
right.
our job to usher them to what's next for them.
Yeah, and I love your approach. And I'm a layperson, obviously watching volleyball, but I always notice how close the young ladies seem to one another as a team. They hug a lot. They seem like they're very supportive of each other, and you love the environment. Now I know the truth is actually a little different when we get into the locker room and the politics of it, like you mentioned. But it always seems like there's a real camaraderie. And I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but going to an HBCU for Reese must be so much easier to just go and fit in. You don't have to worry about if you're going to, match up with the other young ladies on the team. Like you're going to find somebody on the Howard volleyball team from a similar background, with similar interests, with similar parent stories, um, and with similar dreams, goals, and desires. So, do you think that kind of played into her decision, just being able to fit in very easily?
Sure it did. I mean, she did mention, like I said, she felt seen. And I think, because Howard is about excellence, she saw Black females showcasing excellence. And it's not that people didn't showcase excellence at the other schools, but, you
Right.
talk to them and mentally they're focused and that's not to say that those other distractions that you mentioned aren't there, but it's just something special. And Howard just seems to really focus on total person, and they also know the culture that works for them. And so they really like I remember, when she was having discussions with them, they didn't just want to speak with her. They wanted
Right.
to kind of understand who are you, who do you come from, what are your ideals, how were you raised, those sort of things. And I think that probably is a recipe to a lot of those things. The volleyball side of things for females or just sports in general, and I remember when I was at Tsunami, program director Don Hun and I had a
Mm.
conversation. We both kind of used this term, but I can't remember who kind of said it first. But it's, you know, the adage is boys fight to bond and girls bond to fight.
I love it. I
And I
love
think that is part of my concern too with so many males coaching in volleyball because
I
they
get it.
lead with that approach, right? It
Right.
is not to say the girls are wusses or anything like that, but they want to feel like I'm a part of something and we're working at it together, and then they're going to give you, every bit of it. Whereas, I think, and it's probably just how we've been socialized, and brainwashed a little bit. I think that's part of it too, why you sort of see it or feel that, there's appearance of more cohesion with the females. But I mean, some of the pettiness and cliques and all of that still also
Right.
exist. And I'm sure, Howard will have its, thing or two
Sure.
that's not perfect. But I honestly feel beyond that, they were her life at a time when she has experienced so much adversity and she's been shelved. She's been told, "Oh, Reese, you're so athletic, you'll be fine." So there's
Right.
this tendency to not nurture and give
Right.
grace to the people who have actually probably the most potential. Um,
Exactly.
and so I just
Exactly.
think, she was running away from that. And she
Yeah.
found a stellar place to land that looks at her not as farm equipment, but as,
Right. A
person.
human being. Yes, indeed.
Mhm.
And as one of the future leaders of our country. And
Oh,
that's
thank you.
that but that's what the level of expectation for African American men and women when they come to Howard is very high. So when you set high expectations for young people, they're pleasers by nature, right? So that's what she's going to get. Black professors, right? Black people who have been a part of the Obama administration. Felicia Rashad is teaching at Howard University. Nicole Hannah Jones, right? She's going to be in the presence of greatness, and that makes you want to be great too. So, I am so happy for you guys. I can't tell you how big a fan I have been of you and your family and your kids. I am not surprised they are phenomenal. So congratulations to you. We're going to be following you, and we hope to talk to Ms. Reese at some point, and we hope you'll come back and fill us in on your Howard University experience because I know it's going to be amazing.
No, absolutely, Mark. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all of your support. To your viewers, you helped my kid early on, right before she was getting ready to get involved with the collegiate process with communications, because she's a really, nice kid. She respects authority so much, but you really helped her, and so we owe a lot to
Oh,
you as well. And I just want to thank you, and but definitely looking forward to sharing with you her journey.
awesome. Awesome. April Watkins, thank you so much for your insight and sharing your journey because it is absolutely amazing and it's a story that many parents need to hear. So thank you so much for being with us.